Hey everybody, welcome back to Valhalla Acres. I know I've been a little MIA lately. It's springtime on the farm and I had a ton of projects to get done. But today, because it's springtime, I want to talk about chickens and what do you do with eggs? First of all, I would like to point out that my chickens keep digging up my bulbs and eating the tops of the plants, and it's driving me crazy. Absolutely crazy. But when you have chickens on a farm, that's something that you kind of have to accept as part of the territory. I mean, look at this. How rude is that? That's a tulip. Thanks so much. You can see where they've taken dust baths over here next to the lilacs and the flowers. I just want something pretty. I don't know why that's so hard to ask. Anyway, so let me go over here. I want to show you something that I really love about having chickens on the farm. So my girls like to escape the coop, but sometimes it turns out to be something really, really cool. So right down here, see her? She has been sitting on this nest for probably a week solid. So only a couple more weeks and we should have a bunch of tiny little chicks running around. I really love this breed. She is a dark Cornish. They are extremely broody and they always get out, they go lay their eggs and they disappear. And so you may not see them for a while and then all of a sudden they show up and they have like a dozen little chicks with them. So, I mean, yeah, they get out and they destroy my flowers, but my flowers eventually do grow. But then we get chicks out of it too, and that's exciting for us. So I'm going to go back in the house because we started off today in true Arizona spring fashion with rain. I woke up at probably about 4:30 or so, and it was pouring rain. And then as the sun came up and the temperature dropped, because it always does that, it turned into snow, and it was huge, big, fat, heavy flakes, and it just covered everything, and it made the roads fun to drive on when I took the kids to school. And my daughter was like, "Mom, why don't they cancel school today?" And I said, well, they already passed their time when they would call it for school or call a delay because the buses were already on the road at that point. But anyway, so it's kind of windy. It's definitely cloudy. Yep, and they move pretty fast around here because, boy, do we have wind. So I'm going to go inside, and I'm going to show you some stuff inside. Okay, we're inside now, and in here are 20 little meat birds. These are Cornish Rock or Cornish Cross. So I want to point out real quick, if you are interested in getting chickens and you are so new to it that you're just like, what is that breed? Is it a good breed? You can always check on the hatchery websites, and they will tell you roughly how many eggs they lay a year. You know, are they good for the cold? Are they, good hardy birds for the heat? But when you go to the feed store, there's not a whole lot of literature on the kind of bird that you're buying. So if you go to the feed store, it's fine. We got these guys at Cow Ranch. I cannot go into feed stores in the spring because I always buy chicks, always, because I'm always like, oh my gosh, I want to try that breed, and oh, those look so cute, and they're super cute. Anyway, if you are looking to get into chickens, and you want chickens that lay you eggs, and that are going to live longer than a couple of months, don't get these guys. So at the feed stores, they will be labeled like Cornish Cross, Cornish Rock. These are meat birds. They are bred specifically to be butchered about 8 to 12 weeks, depending on their size. Because if they live any longer than that, they will start dying. Like, these guys already have a pretty high mortality rate. And like, they're so cute right now. But in a couple of weeks, they put so much energy into growing their bodies and their muscle mass, the meat, that they don't grow all their feathers. And so they're half naked, ugly birds, and they stink and they're disgusting, and all they want to do is eat all day. So it is really important too that You feed them twice a day. Some people like to leave food out for them to eat all day. But with these guys, they'll just sit there. They'll sit there and eat it and not move. And they need to move. So just feed them twice a day. Hi. Yes. They're like, what are you talking about? It's like we're some weirdos or something. But anyway, Cornish cross, Cornish rock, meat birds, fantastic meat. They grow really fast. They're not bad to butcher. The roosters get huge. Like we've had some that are like 6-7 pounds before. Wonderful, but they are not egg-laying chickens. Okay, just remember that. Springtime, like I said, is super busy on the farm, and not just for the people, but also the other two-legged creatures, the chickens and the ducks. And we have a bunch of chickens and ducks, so we get a ton of eggs every day. My 3-year-old's favorite thing is to go out and look for eggs every day. He always tells me, Mom, there's eggs out there. So he goes out and he looks for nests, and he'll fill up a bucket easily a day. So this is just a couple days. It's a couple days worth of eggs. Yeah, that's a lot of eggs. So there's chicken and duck eggs in here, but I wanted to show you too, like, so he finds these nests. I have no idea how old these eggs are. Are they still good? Are they like little ticking stinky time bombs? Like, what do I do? The best way to do that is you float your eggs, okay? So you can fill up your sink with water and you put your eggs in it. So it's like 2 birds with 1 stone here. So you're going to check and see if they're fresh, and you're going to also wash them. After you wash them, you need to make sure you get them into the refrigerator. Okay? You put them in the water. If they sink to the bottom, that's a fresh egg. Okay? Even if they stand up, this one's not going to do it because it's really fresh egg. But even if they stand up, but they're still touching the bottom, that's an older egg, but it's not rotten. Now, if they float, oh boy, use extreme caution and get rid of that egg very carefully, very, very carefully. Because like I said, they're like little ticking, stinky time bombs. All right, so I am going to float all of these eggs. And then I'm going to show you some different ways that we can preserve eggs to last a little bit longer. All right, we got a bucket full of eggs in here, and some of them are standing up, but that's okay. None of them are floating. But can we also talk about like how gorgeous all the different colors are? So we've got like these really dark ones from my dark Morans. This one, look at the beautiful spots on it. We get some really pretty blue eggs. These are duck eggs. They'll be sold after I get them cleaned up. But yeah. So I know all these eggs are good. Okay, Trajan is still helping me wash eggs. So we've got all these duck eggs here. We've got these guys that are good, need to be washed. And over here I got a bunch of eggs that I'm going to pickle. And I wanted to share a little tip for you all. Farm fresh eggs are super hard to peel. The best way that I have found is to steam them, or if you've got an Instapot, you can pressure cook them on low pressure for 6 to 8 minutes, and they peel wonderfully. So one of the ways that we're going to preserve eggs today is we're going to pickle some. Now, there are no safe, tested recipes or methods for canning pickled eggs to be shelf stable. Now I'm going to hear everybody say, well, you know, we used to see them on the gas station counter, and one that's really gross because people would like reach in with their bare hand into the jar and get an egg. And like, that's just nasty. And it's just, it comes back down to density. Like an egg, of course, is going to be low acid. So like logically you're going to think, well, that would be pressure canning. But they are pickled, but they are super dense, and to make sure that they are heated all the way through properly is really hard to do with canning. And so we are going to pickle these. I have a super cute little jar that I found that I'm going to do, bake a bunch of pickles. So I'm going to I think it'll hold probably 3 dozen eggs. So that's how many I'm going to put in the canner, or not the canner, the pressure cooker. Hang on, sweetie. Hang on. And then when they're done, I'll show you how easy they peel. All right, I have 3 dozen eggs in my Instapot. There's some water in there to create steam, because that's how we're going to create pressure. And I'm always dumb when it comes to putting the lid on these things. There we go. Okay, we're gonna make sure it's closed. We're gonna press pressure cook. Turn off the keep warm. I have 8 minutes. My pressure is set to low. And then this just automatically just does it on its own. Like, it's fancy. Okay, everybody is washed and floated. And as you can tell, we have a lot of eggs. These are all the duck eggs. And Trey didn't wash those all for me. And here are all the chicken eggs that are good. There were a couple that were floating. And why do they float? Chicken eggs are porous. The eggs are porous. Eggshells are porous, okay? So they're going to let air in. And they're going to let stuff out. It's a two-way street. And as they do that, they create a large air pocket inside them. And so that's why sometimes, like, even if they stand up, that just means they have an air pocket, but it's not so big. And bad eggs will float because they have a larger air pocket, or they're turning hard inside. And some of, like, you'll hear them kind of rattle, or you can feel it. So if you wash your eggs, it is important that they get processed quickly, either, into the refrigerator, into the freezer, however, whatever you're doing with them after you wash them. You can leave your eggs room temperature and on the counter. Don't wash them, because you wash that protective bloom off of them and it allows them to go bad faster, okay? So you're probably wondering, how do I tell the difference between a chicken egg and a duck egg? So one, duck eggs are larger. Sometimes you get a large chicken egg and it's like a double yolker. But the biggest thing for me is my ducks will all lay in one nest or a couple nest areas on the ground, because they don't get up in a nest box. But also, so if Killian gets in the chicken coop and he gets all the eggs and he pushes them to the fence and they're all mixed in, the best way to tell is these guys are kind of waxy. When you look at them, it's kind of hard to tell. Like, they're kind of waxy looking. And the chicken eggs are not so waxy looking. Like, that one's shiny because it's wet, a little wet still. Okay, so that's the number one way that you can check and tell between them. Waterfowl eggs are going to be waxy looking. They have a bit of a thicker coating on them because they are in the water or near the water. And then the water, because like I said, eggshells are porous and they're in two-way street. They can let water in and let bad bacteria into them. So over here, the Instapot finished, and remember we were pressure cooking these on low pressure for 6 to 8 minutes just to get a hard-boiled egg. And then I'm going to let it release pressure naturally on its own, and then we're going to come back to this guy still. And these are going to go, they're going to go in that cute jar right there. And there's my crazy spice rack back there. So that's going to go in there. We're going to make pickled eggs, and I'll go walk you through that in just a minute. Another way to preserve eggs, because like I said, there are no safe, tested methods for pickled eggs on the shelf or canned eggs. So a lot of times, I freeze dry these guys raw. So here they are afterwards. So what I do is I crack up, I think I can fit like 6 dozen eggs in my freeze dryer. I have little silicone ice cube tray, so I crack them up and I put them in there, and I pre-freeze them, because sometimes if you don't and they aren't completely frozen before the vacuum pump kicks on, you end up with a huge, disgusting mess in your freeze dryer. So I pre-freeze stuff like this, like liquidy stuff like this, like eggs, and I haven't tried milk, but I know I'm going to pre-freeze the milk. And so when they come out, they're in these cubes, and then they easily break up. So these guys are I still need to run these through the food processor to break them up and get them into Mylar bags for storage. But that's one way. I can freeze dry them. You can crack eggs into ice cube trays and just freeze them like that. Freeze them in the ice cube tray. Once they're frozen, pop them into a Ziploc bag like this and pop them back in the freezer. And then you can use those for scrambled eggs, for baking, whatever. You can also go ahead and pre-cook your eggs, like scramble your eggs and freeze them. They get a little rubbery. You have to make sure that you get all of the air out of them, so you can vacuum seal the bags and then freeze them. And then there's also water glassing. I have not tried that, but I know a lot of people have success with that. And so they're submerging it into like a solution, and it's closing off those pores on it, and they can last a while that way. So there are a couple ways that you can preserve eggs, and a lot of variety there. Okay, so for my brine, for my pickled eggs, I did some beets, some red onions, garlic, and I threw in some peppercorns, whole peppercorns, because my hubby likes that. I did half and half. I did half apple cider vinegar and half water. And then I brought it to a boil. Now I need to let it cool down a little bit. Since this is a refrigerator pickle, you get to choose whatever kind of vinegar you want to use. Okay? And with that, you also get to play with the amount of vinegar. So 50-50 is pretty good to start with. You can adjust from there on your next batch, whether you want more vinegar or less, because it is a refrigerator pickle, okay? If you are doing cucumbers or other pickles that are going to be shelf stable, you're going to can them, you have to follow the recipe and use the right amount of vinegar, because that is what was tested for the right acidity to make that a shelf-stable product. Now I'm going to add in some salt. This is canning and pickling salt. Refrigerator pickle, you really don't have to use this, but I'm just going to go ahead and this is just salt to taste. Okay, remember guys, I have a gallon jar that I'm doing. So I'm going to stir this up, and then next you're going to see how easy it is to peel those eggs that have been steamed or pressure cooked in the Instant Pot on low pressure, okay? I dumped out all the hot water, and I kind of shook them around to crack the shells a little bit. And now I'm running cold water over them. But this is how easy it is to peel a farm fresh egg. My husband pressure cooked or steamed. Ta-da! Perfect! I'm going to put them in my jar. Okay, I peeled all the eggs and I put them in my jar, and I do say so myself. I did pretty good at guessing how many eggs would fit in there. I could probably fit in another 6, but 3 dozen I think is plenty to start with. So next I'm going to add my brine to this. Look how beautiful the color is. That is from the beets. So I filled up my jar. I did make too much brine, which is fine. If I was doing more eggs today, I'd go ahead and just use that, but I'm not, because 36 eggs is a lot of eggs at one time to pickle, so I'm just going to leave it at this. So I'm going to freeze my brine, and I'm going to save it. No use letting that go to waste. These guys, after they cool down, I'm going to put the lid on them and put them in the fridge and let them pickle for a week, and then I'll have my hubby try them and see how he likes them. And then if I need to, I can adjust the brine over here for the next round, which is a-okay. All right, so I hope that you guys were all able to learn a few different ways to take care of eggs, especially if you have a surplus like I do. We get several dozen a day. And now, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will put my email address and my Facebook page below in the description. Now, I have to go figure out what to do with the rest of those eggs that I washed and get some eggs packed up to sell. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Happy spring, and thank you so much for watching.